dollar. We have got to understand the difference between making money and building wealth. Those two things are different. Let one spouse pay the bills and use the money from the other spouse, if she or he is working, to invest. Or if it's just you, work during the day, use your side hustle to invest.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited that you are joining us. Healthy Homestead, Finances, and Generational Wealth and Side Hustles, presented by the Magnolia Chapter of the Links Incorporated. Excited to be here with you and our president, who is very proud of this event as well, and that is Deanna Griffin. I'm Karen Greer with CBS 46, and I am joined by a fabulous host who has worked with us before on these, Reggie Holloway. This is our second time hosting together. So Reggie, tell people a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I'm excited to be with you as well. You guys have been so wonderful to me as mentors, and I'm highly appreciative of that. I'm a mass communications major at the University of West Georgia. And also I am a proud member and a resident at Carrie Stillpitt's home. And I know many of them are watching, including my favorite executive director, Dr. Evelyn Louisa. And I know all of my friends are watching through the Magnolia Links, Facebook, and YouTube Live.
Oh, we love Carrie Stillpitt's, and we're so proud of the relationship we have had with them for the last, I'd say, 3 decades. So it is wonderful to have you, Reggie, show just what is possible and what comes out of that wonderful place. Want to also give a big shout out to all the folks who are watching us. And if you're not telling friends about it, please do. Make sure you share this, because we have a jam-packed program for you with a lot of information you can all use. We have information about financial literacy, and we're going to hear some money tips that we want to make sure not just the older people, but the younger people take advantage of, so that you don't make the mistakes that we've seen so many people make, Reggie. So we're ready to go, aren't we?
Yes, ma'am. We have wonderful panelists who will offer us information in 3 areas: finance, generational wealth, and side hustles, or in other words, entrepreneurship.
I love that side hustles thing. That's awesome. So we're going to begin with the founder, president, and CEO of Operation Hope, John Hope Bryant. Operation Hope is an international organization based right in the city of Atlanta. It's working to disrupt poverty, empower inclusion for low and moderate income youth and adults. I had a chance to talk with John Hope Bryant earlier in the week, just after his appearance on CNBC's a frequent host and commentator on there. The first thing we really wanted to talk about is why he calls financial literacy the new civil rights issue. Check it out.
It's like, it's human dignity, right? Ambassador Young, our personal hero, both you and me, he said, to live in a system of free enterprise and not to understand the rules of free enterprise must be the very definition of slavery. I have said that there's never been a riot in a 700 credit score community in America's history. 700 credit score communities don't riot, they go shopping. All of our problems are in 500 credit score neighborhoods. You see a check casher next to a payday loan lender, next to a rent-to-own store, next to a title lender, next to a liquor store, next to a pawn shop, and a church down the street trying to make you feel a little bit better once a week, screaming and holler a little bit, get a little bit of therapy out so you can go back and not be cray-cray on Monday. This is surviving, not thriving, and it's certainly not winning. Financial literacy is what the right to vote was 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It's what suffrage for women was 80 years ago. The right to vote, basic privilege. It's what health care was 20 years ago. Health wellness was 10 years ago. It is a new norm. It is, you live in this capitalist system. We don't understand capitalism. And no one ever taught us, Karen. It's not like we got the memo and screwed it up. My last book before, Up From Nothing. It's not like we got the memo and screwed it up. We just never got the memo. This is the issue of our time. And black folks, the net worth between blacks and whites, and we're 10% of the black net worth, even though we're making, in many cases, the same amount of money. And to me, that is about deciding to own stocks or not, deciding to own real estate or not, deciding to own businesses or not. We have mastered we have mastered human dignity. I mean, Black folks, we are a culture. We are the richness of this country. Well, now we got to master capitalism. And a banker came in my classroom, Karen, when I was 9 years old, happened to be white, and he was teaching financial literacy and home economics. And I know the links is all about, this sort of wraparound education in schools and education and community. So thank you so much for what you do. My wife's, by the way, a link, and my mother-in-law is a link, the Dalton. So I'm sitting here, and this banker is teaching financial literacy. I raised my hand. Excuse me, sir. What do you do for a living, and how do you get rich legally? He said, I'm a banker, and I finance entrepreneurs. I said, sir, I don't know what an entrepreneur is. I've never heard that word before in my life. If you don't understand money, you're gonna finance what's called depreciating assets, financing jewelry, right? Over financing cars, financing things that go into price that are going down in value versus what I call good debt, a mortgage on a home. Even education is a good debt because you'll make more money with a college degree than you will with a high school degree. Make people feel better about that college student loan. Investing in a business, stocks and bonds. But those are investments. But you're going to have some debt, have it good debt, things that appreciate. But folks make this money, and they think that spending it, that having it and spending it, that somehow they're going to be okay. And they don't realize that money is velocity. It's got to go somewhere. And if it's not going up, guess where it's going? It's going down and out. And people would love to separate me. They're happy to separate you from your money. They're happy to take your money from Neiman Marcus. They're happy to take your money at Nordstrom's. They're happy to take your money that's 28% credit card at the department store.
How do we make more money and spend less money?
You've gotta pay yourself. So here's some simple rules. When you get a dollar, you didn't get a dollar. You got 90 cents. When you get $100, you got $90. Take $10 and put it in a savings account for yourself. Take $10 and buy some stocks. Buy some bonds, put it in an account to buy some real estate. If you're renting in Atlanta, greater Atlanta, and by the way, I'm a landlord, so I'm not talking against my own interests here, Karen, but if you're renting in Atlanta and you're trying to be up in Bougieville and Buckhead or wherever, what are you doing? You're literally just opening a window and throwing money out the window. You don't own that place. You're paying somebody else's mortgage off, right? What are you flossing for? Spending money you don't have, with people who don't matter, about things that don't count, with people who don't care about you. Why don't you buy a house downtown, buy a house in Midtown, buy a house in a black or brown neighborhood, buy it, rent it, and own it. Buy it, rent it, and live in it. Then buy another one, use equity from that one, buy it, rehab it, and rent it. So buy it, rehab it, and own it. Buy it, rehab it, and rent it. You do that 2 times, Karen, and you got generational wealth. Nothing I just said is complicated. Nothing I just said. And by the way, if you can afford to rent, you can afford to own. In fact, in many cases, owning is cheaper because the mortgage payment is tax deductible. 2/3 of your mortgage payments on a 30-year mortgage are interest. It's a completely tax deductible. You can get that money back. The appreciation is yours. The depreciation, which you write off on your taxes, is yours. Black folks own I think it's 41% of us own a home. This hurts me to my heart. 74% of whites own a home. Where do you think their wealth comes from? As soon as you can, buy a house because they aren't building any more land. I love that we're talking sort of greater Atlanta in this particular conversation because from middle of Atlanta to the airport is the next gold mine, Karen. Middle Atlanta, Midtown to the airport is a gold mine. And
that's why you're there.
That's why I own land. That's why, no doubt about it. Churchill, what's happening now? What have you done for me lately? You want to find a house that's got the worst house in the best block. It's got a tree in the roof. Buy it for used to be $15,000. Now probably more like $50,000. Buy it, rehab it, rent it, and don't sell it.
So do you call that money you can make while you're sleeping?
That's the boom. You're making money. You build wealth in your sleep. Stocks, bonds, investments, business, real estate, income producing anything. I mean, you build wealth in your sleep.
All right, we want to thank John Hope Bryant for that interview. As you can imagine, he had a whole lot more to say, including, what it was like for him growing up. His family lost everything. His dad made a lot of investments, lost everything, and how he really worked to bring himself up and create the organization he has, and how he always still keeps up with his credit score and has a counselor look at his score. So we're going to post all of the interview for you on our Magnolia Links Facebook page and on our YouTube channel.
We're going to continue to talk about financial issues with two panelists today. One is Sandra Davis. She's a financial coach. She is also a founder and executive director of Sage Financial Solutions. Also joining us today is Dr. Juanita Warren, an accredited financial counselor and coach. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So excited. Sandra, we're going to start with you. Just talk about what are some of the big mistakes people make, would you say, when it comes to their finances, especially those in Black and Brown communities?
Well, thank you so much for having us here. So the first thing that I want to say is that being in poverty or experiencing poverty is not a character flaw. So the first mistake we make is treating ourselves and each other as though it is. So when we shame and blame ourselves, we immediately go to the place of there's something that we have done wrong. And I'm going to get to the part about our personal ownership, but I just want to be clear about that, because the racial wealth gap did not happen because we bought stuff at needless markup. That's not how this works. So I want to be real clear. And I know that my opinions and perspectives may not be the most popular, because after being a coach for more than 15 years, having a master's degree in financial planning, I understand that financial literacy is not good enough. Knowing better does not mean doing better, but you can't do better unless you know better. So that's number one. So that whole first thing of what we do wrong as Black folks, we need to get a grip on that. Right? There's a whole bunch of things that we do right. There's a whole bunch of things that we do very well. We are the most educated. We do own homes. We do all of those things. But you know what? The homes in our neighborhoods, they don't appreciate like the homes in other neighborhoods. So let's get real. Right? Let's get real from the get-go. Systemic oppression perpetuates the racial and gender wealth gap. Number one, off the top, this country was built on our backs, continues to make money on our backs. So let's get clear about that. The third thing, and I speak in threes, the thing that we do where our personal ownership and accountability does cause us harm is where we focus on the things that we cannot control and don't control the things we can. So our cash flow, once we make it, yes, we can manage it better. If we are in jobs that are underpaying us, we can. I'm not a fan of the word side hustle. I'm going to tell you, my mom struggled with money all of my life, and her perspective was, I'll just get another job. You know what that side hustle did? My mom was never home. My mom worked herself into an early grave. And so from my perspective, we've got to be really careful when we're talking about all of these things that don't include impacting the racial wealth gap, impacting the racial income gap. August was Black women's equal pay day. That means Black women had to work all of 2020 and up until August of 2021 to make what a white man made in 2020. So we've got some systemic issues. We've got some infrastructure issues. We've got some internalized racism issues that go into why we're in the financial position that we're in. So is that enough?
That is, it gets us where we need to be for sure. Because Reggie, you got the next one.
Yes. Now, Dr. Juanita, I'm pretty sure we can all agree no one really wants to be in debt. But with more than half of America saying they live paycheck to paycheck, can you please explain to us, how can we avoid debt in the first place?
I think kind of what you see is what you get. And I also think we've misheard the adage that nothing's guaranteed but death and taxes. And we've heard it to be nothing's guaranteed but debt and taxes. And that's both a lie. We have to change our mindset and our mentality. So instead of, again, back to what you see is what you get. If we're focused on debt, then that's what you're going to get. So make the shift in our mind to focus on wealth. Nope, you do not have to have debt. if we're going to pick an adage to internalize, it should be, "Oh no man, nothing but." So making sure that we're not becoming indebted, that we're not taking on a lifestyle of debt and having to use credit because we don't have cash. We have to hold ourselves accountable and responsible and begin looking at what can we afford and how much, if time is money, how much time does whatever it is we're going to buy cost us? So just one, get away from the mentality of debt and focusing on wealth as opposed to, the word debt, and look at one of my debt is the devil. Look at it as that, and wanting to stay away from debt unless we're using it strategically.
Good point, Sandra. Let's talk about, according to a CNBC report, this year, the average American has about $90,000 in debt. And that includes everything from the credit cards to the student loans to mortgages. What are the different strategies out there that people can use to repay all that borrowed money?
Yeah. So first of all, I completely agree with Dr. Warren that recognizing what we think about debt. If we have the attitude or the perspective that we will always be in debt, it's going to be very difficult to see our way through to not use debt for things that are not serving us. And so let's think about how, what debt is, right? Debt was designed to be leverage to build wealth. Wealthy people use debt. We used to call it OPM, right? Other people's money. So debt in and of itself is not the problem. Our perspective and how we use debt becomes problematic. When we use debt for leverage, it can build our wealth. When we use it for our consumer lifestyle, right, to manage how we live, that can be problematic. Now, once you find yourself in debt, again, how we think about debt plays a role. There are a couple of ways you may have heard about as far as how do you get out of debt. One is called the avalanche, right? And the avalanche is usually the best financial decision. And the reason it's the best financial decision is you're paying off your highest interest first. So you're writing down all of your debts, you're writing down what you owe, you're writing down your interest rates along with the amount that you owe. There's a program that does this. Dr. Warren and I are both partners with AFCPE, right? They have an app called PowerPay. So it's powerpay.org. And you can list all of these and do highest interest first. So pay down your highest interest first. That's the best financial answer. Now, there's also paying the lowest balance first, and that's often called the snowball method. What the snowball method can do is help you feel that small successes of, I got that little one paid off. And then once you pay off that little one, you take the money that you were paying for that and you apply it to the next debt. Now, the key here is sometimes there's a right financial decision and sometimes there's the right emotional decision. Some of us find ourselves in a position where we've got to get that emotional need met in order to be able to do some of the more difficult things. So the first thing is, like I said before, no shame. Wherever you are is where you are. Start where you are. You can talk to a counselor. Dr. Warren's an AFC. There are AFCs, FFCs, financial fitness coaches all over the country who can help with these kinds of things at either low or no cost. And make sure that seeing a financial counselor is one of the ones that can help you. Make sure that, you stay away from the hustlers, because there's, do you have more than $10,000 in debt? If they're enjoying your debt that much, it's better for them than it is for you.
Good point.
Dr. Juanita, I'm getting the question back to you. What are some other ways of maybe just avoiding it altogether, maybe building wealth outside of debt or not even seeing it? Or maybe just changing the whole perspective of how we view debt and all?
Know you. Know, instead of it, unless you make sense, your dollars and cents won't make sense to you. So understand what drives your spending. Like she was saying, understand, your mentality and how you're there. Understand, is it what the emotional need is? We all are emotional spenders. Is it that when we're upset? Is it that we're happy? Understand your personality, your preference, but know your priorities and your goal. So if your goal is to have, you're not going to have if you're giving away and you're spending money. So manage your money and don't allow no one to know more about your money than you do.
That was a word there. That was a word there.
That's where you drop the mic. Awesome. You guys are amazing. We could sit and talk to you the rest of the afternoon. You know, we've got a jam-packed session today, so we would love for you to come back and do something with us if you would give us that honor. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, we really want to move on, and I'll put contact information for both of our fabulous people on our Magnolia Links Facebook page for anyone who wants to reach out. Once again, want to thank Juanita and Sandra for that, those pearls of wisdom that we can definitely use. All right. Now we're going to talk about something very important as well, Reggie.
Yes. We're going to talk about generational wealth and also estate planning. Joining us are Salitha Butler. She's a legal and regulatory affairs and procurement contracting at Truist Bank. Also, we're going to be joined by Alex Gaines. She's an attorney at Alex Gaines Law, PC, and she focuses on wills, trust, and probate issues. And finally, we're going to be joined by Veronica McClendon, an attorney and strategist committed to helping families build and leave meaningful legacies. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you for having
My
us.
pleasure to be here.
Oh, awesome. You guys look fabulous. All right, let's start with you. Salitha, let's get some definitions straight off the top of this. Tell us the meanings of heirs, property, estate planning, and generational wealth. What are we talking about?
Salitha's not on right now. I don't know if she's in the waiting room. If not, I can answer to
That'd be
some
great.
of Okay. So heirs property, I like to define it as property that's passed down from one generation to the next, where there's no clear title. So someone has died and the property is in their name, but the family has not taken the proper steps to take it out of that person's name and put it into the names of the people who are still living, who inherited that property from them. And it's going to be property that's owned by a lot of family members. Estate planning is the process of making sure that that doesn't happen. You're putting a plan in place in advance to make sure that whatever you leave behind goes according to the plan that you put in place.
Awesome.
My question to you, Miss Alex. What mistakes do we kind of make, especially within the Black and Brown communities, when it comes to estate planning?
Well, I would say that the number one mistake that we make in our community is actually not planning. Almost 70% of African Americans are without any type of estate plan, whether it's a will or a living trust. And that's for a host of reasons. One of the main reasons is just not having information and not being aware of the consequences of not planning. As Veronica was saying, just not being able to control what happens to that property. It just will continue to, it could be lost actually. And so you want to make sure that you've actually talked about it. A lot of people want to avoid the conversation. They don't want to jinx themselves. And so they just go without talking about it or putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And so that's the biggest mistake that's made. And additionally, another mistake is not realizing that you need to have a lot of life insurance, being underinsured or uninsured. And so many people will have insurance tied to their employer, and it would cover maybe a year's worth of a salary, or they have enough insurance for their burial expenses. And with us having such a wealth gap in our communities, having life insurance is one of the easiest ways to pass on generational wealth. And for those who are in their working years, having their own life insurance policy, whether it's a term, a 20 or 30-year term that you get when you're in your peak earning years, and that is a hedge against not being able to put away for retirement. So that if you were to pass away before you've accumulated retirement and other assets, you do have funds that are tax-free to pass on to your to the generations after you. Or if you have young children, you have have enough income for them to be raised in a comfortable manner until they are of the age of self-sufficiency. And so those are the main mistakes that we make, just not having the information and not actually taking the opportunity to plan when you can.
All right, and Salitha, tell us, see you joining us now. Tell us about Georgia Heirs Property Law Center. Why does it exist, and what do they do?
Sure. So, and I'll start off with letting everyone know that I'm on the board of trustees for the Georgia Heirs Property Law Center, and Truist Bank does pro bono legal work with the Georgia Heirs Property Law Center. But the Georgia Heirs Property Law Center is a nonprofit legal organization, and it assists individuals with estate planning. And someone may have already started talking about what estate planning is. But it also helps individuals try to not create heirs property. And if there is heirs property or title issues that exist on real property that people have, they try to help individuals clear that up. Additionally, the Georgia Heirs Property Law Center helps individuals with trying to get access to funding or resources to help with land management. So they have a lot of things around heirs property, estate planning, just property ownership and development, and education that they provide services for.
All right. Ms. Salitha, this summer, the Philadelphia Inquirer reported that more than 10,000 properties in the city had unclear ownership. Can you explain how something like that can happen? And also, is it common in other cities?
Sure. So let me back up a little bit just in case people may not totally understand what heirs property is. So heirs property is this concept, it's more of a legal construct that deals with when individuals own real property and they own it jointly, and or it could be that you have multiple owners that are organizations that own the property jointly. And so there is no single ownership, you're sharing it. Now, if you have an LLC that owns the property, that's considered as one organization, not to be heirs property because you have an individual owner, which is an organization. So to your question about the Philadelphia discussion about the unclear title property, it can happen in really any major city. It can happen really in rural areas, and it is very, very common to occur, especially in communities of color. And so getting to the fact of trying to make sure that you're properly doing your estate planning. And when I say properly doing your estate planning, you're having these really difficult discussions on how after you pass, property will be transferred, and making sure that, like organizations like the Georgia Heirs Property Law Center helps you not to create this joint title concept, then that gives you an ability to try to prohibit having the title entanglement issues that you're seeing in the Philadelphia article, or that you'll see in the city of Atlanta and in various areas that have just unclear title, and that prohibits individuals from being able to do things as simple as to borrow against the property. Because, for instance, if I own property and I own it with my two siblings, then all three of us have to be a part of the decision making of borrowing. And banks don't borrow to three individuals owning. If a bank wants to loan something, that they want either an organization to be signing or they want an individual to be signing that documentation. And the same could be if you're selling timber, that if you have joint owners of real property and you're trying to cut timber to, say, finance your kid to go to college, then if you have 100 people who have owned this property because of the generations, it was never cleared up, that heirs property, then that means 100 people have to sign off when that timber company buys the timber and cuts it.
You want to fix that quickly then. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Veronica, let's ask you a question for you. In building wealth, what are the best vehicles for building it with cash?
So I would say That's something that is more of a financial advisor question. I'm an attorney. And so my goal is to help you to protect the wealth that you have built and make sure that you pass it to the next generation in a way that's going to make the most sense. So
Okay,
I would say
I'm gonna give you another one then. I'm gonna give you one. That's
okay.
good for you.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a good one. We know marginalized communities lack the resources to help actually break that cycle. And many can only focus on survival, short-term outcomes. Why is this an issue that should concern all of us?
Well, I want to go to what Reggie asked in terms of what's going on in Philadelphia and how Sletha said that this is something that happens around the country. You have these communities where heirs property is a major issue. And what do those communities look like? It's the blighted homes. It's the place, the boarded up homes where we don't know who owns it. We know is Miss So-and-so. She used to live there 40 years ago, but we don't know what happened to the property. It's the places that are the drug houses, the places where there's prostitution because people are not maintaining those homes. And so this is what happens when we don't have estate planning. We have people who own homes, who own property. We have people who own commercial property, and that person dies, and there's nobody in place to make sure that that legacy is carried on. There's nobody in place to make sure that the home is maintained, that the taxes are paid, that the grass is cut. There's nobody to make sure that there is a sustainable business moving into that building after the owner has died. So when we don't have estate planning, it impacts our marginalized communities significantly. That's why we end up with the blight. That's why we end up with the rundown buildings, because we did not have a good plan in place to make sure that there's stewardship over these properties.
And we know we can see that in so many areas. Veronica, thanks.
Yes, and my question to Miss Alex, we discussed earlier about how no one likes debt. And pretty much my question to you would be, to what extent is the surviving family members of a deceased relative, to what extent are they liable for their debt?
Well, when a family member passes away, all of their assets and all of their debts are attached to their estate. So rather than it being theirs, to pass on, it belongs in their estate. And so you are not responsible for your family member's debts to the extent that you're not actually a co-borrower with that family member. If that family member passes away, then their assets have to be passed through the correct probate process to transfer it to your beneficiary. So if you don't have a will or a trust and you pass away, then the law says that it will go to your next of kin, and it already has that outlined as to how it will pass. You would be liable if you were to take those assets without paying the debts that are attached to the deceased individual's estate. And so if you have $50,000 in a bank account and you owe $25,000 in credit card bills, and your family members just took that money and they spent it without actually paying off the debt, the creditors to which the debt would owe could come and try and recover that $25,000. So that's the extent that you're liable for another person's debt. It's only if you've taken the assets that should have been used to pay those debts off and use them for yourself without going through the proper process of closing out that person's estate and then transferring the remaining assets to yourself, to the beneficiaries.
Alex, that's a good point. Veronica, I want to ask you quickly. So what kinds of things should people talk about before, especially a family, before going to visit an estate attorney, before you actually sit down to start setting that up?
I say, first you got to know what you own. You got to know, okay, these are the assets that I have, whether I would consider it to be a little bit or a lot. This is what I own. And how can I make it? How can I pay this forward? Who in my family would I want to gift this home to, or this land? How do I want to pass this land to my children? Really just start thinking big picture. What do I want? I know that I'm not going to be here forever. Who's going to take the mantle take the baton after I'm gone? really think about that. Think about the people in your life who could most benefit. It may not be the people that will come to mind initially. It might be after some thinking, you say, I know my children really don't want this house, but my granddaughter, she's in college and she might want a home to stay in until she gets on her feet. So I'm gonna leave my house to my granddaughter. It's like really thinking about what you own, who would benefit from it, and then take those things to your attorney and ask them, how can you help me to make sure this happens legally? And also ask them, what are some of the implications of these decisions? What pitfalls might I be putting my family members into that I'm not thinking about? So come with your questions, come with your vision, come with your ideas, and let your attorney put those things into writing so that you can strategically make it happen.
All right, getting us ready. I want to thank Salitha, Alex. You guys are amazing once again, giving us all this information we need. Veronica, appreciate you. And we're going to put contact information for everybody on our Magnolia Links Facebook page, and make sure people contact you with some of these great questions, because we're starting to get questions in our chat as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Reggie, you're going to move us on to our last segment here.
Yes, our final segment will be on side hustles. It's really about how to become a successful entrepreneur. Joining us will be Fenda Hillman. She works in public health, and also she owns a real estate firm. And she is also in the beauty supply business. Also will be Mr. Chris Browning. He is a financial analyst and the founder and host of the Popcorn Finance Podcast. And finally, it will be Tracy Moss, the owner of M. Anthony Salon. She also owns rental property and a sign business. She created a Black history camp called Go Beyond Knowledge. Thank you all for being here today, and I can't wait to hear from all of you.
Oh, we are ready. Make sure everybody's unmuted. Fenda, we're going to start with you. Talk to us about the definition, because people maybe are confused with this. The difference between side hustles, entrepreneurs, and really what motivated you to become an entrepreneur.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I'll start with a really quick definition of the best way I like to explain it to people is that, let's say, for example, if you are maybe a lawyer, a doctor, or you're a teacher from Monday through Friday, but on the weekends, you might have a passion that you like to explore. So maybe you sing really well, maybe you bake cakes. So those are things that you might want to take on during the weekends, but those are some short-term commitments, because Monday morning you're going back to your main employment. So that's what I consider a side hustle. Maybe you drive an Uber car or Lyft during the weekends. That's a side hustle where you're really sharing the risk with the owner of the business. You're not really owning that portion of the business if you're driving an Uber or Lyft. But when you decide that you want to now move those short-term projects into something that is more focused towards a career, you're wanting to shift from your Monday through Friday and really make a career out of those short-term projects. Now you're going into entrepreneurship, because in that moment, you are saying to yourself that you want to go into this as a career. You want to assume the majority of the risk and, of course, the majority of the reward. But you are stepping into a different role where you are actually creating a business, you're stimulating the economy even more, and possibly even creating jobs. So that's when you're going into the space of entrepreneurship. Now, what kind of motivated me really quickly for the real estate piece, honestly, I was really inspired by my grandparents. They were high school graduates. And what they always told us growing up, my siblings, my cousins, and my family members, was simply that, owning property, owning land was just one of those keys to financial independence. So I watched them growing up, acquire properties, investing in properties, and to their passing, to their final days, those properties helped to sustain our entire family. And then they also left those properties as legacies for our family. So that was really inspirational for me. And then as it pertains to the beauty supply industry, I've always been what many in the industry call a product junkie. I've always loved researching products, understanding the ingredients that go into making the products, and even the historical background of the manufacturing companies, just to kind of get more into that field. And so as a student in that space, I've always just been interested in beauty supply. But then one day in my research, I discovered that the hair and beauty industry is $1 billion industry, and that the majority of the consumer base are African American women. But then the flip side to that is that in doing my research, I also discovered that now in America, where there's about approximately 10,000, 11,000 beauty supply stores that are existing, there are maybe 2,000 to 3,000 beauty supply stores that are actually owned by African Americans. So I just was really curious as to why, if we are really controlling the dollars, if we are controlling the consumer base, why don't we own some of those aspects in that space? So that kind of triggered me to get into that area.
Mr. Chris, as we all seen, during the pandemic, and especially within quarantine, a lot of us tried to find many other ways to make money. And can you explain to us what this passive income look like, or how to obtain it for the young workers or for the people who are just entering the workforce?
Yeah, the pandemic really showed us how fragile our jobs can be and how something unexpected can come in and just disrupt everything. So I think it's really great that people who are looking for ways to supplement their income to just add some more security to their household. And, for me, the term passive income, I think it does get overused a little bit, because passive income means that you spend some time, you set something up, maybe a little bit of money to make this system that just generates income without you really having to do anything else. But if you use that definition, there's very few items that you can do, or very few things you can do that will just run on their own and you don't have to put some additional work in on your side. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but oftentimes there's going to be a little bit more work required in some of these other, side hustles or side things you do. So I like to break it down into 3 groups. There's the things that are truly passive. There's things that are slightly passive, meaning that it'll require a little bit of work, but not that much. And then there are things like actual side work or side hustle. So with a passive side hustle or passive income stream, there are things that are out there that you can do, like building a website or a blog and something that you're knowledgeable about, creating a course, writing an ebook. But these require some prior knowledge on your side of things. They require a good amount of advertising and marketing time to get people to come and buy and purchase this thing that you've created. Doesn't mean it's not possible, but there is going to be some continuing work. So passive is a hard term to apply to that, but once they get up and running, they can become a passive stream. Even things like creating digital resources. I've seen people who make spreadsheet templates for people, or budget templates and things like that you can put up on a store like Etsy and have that just run on its own and run in the background. So if you have the skill and the expertise in those areas, this can be a way for you to generate income without you having to daily go in and do actual physical work for this money. If you jump into the slightly passive area, these are things that require a little bit of maintenance on your side. Investing is actually a form of passive income, although it does require a job to give you the income to invest. But during the pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic, we've seen that you can pretty much rent out anything. So we all are, I think, are pretty much familiar with services like Airbnb that allow you to rent out your room or your entire house. So that's a way to generate some slightly passive income, because you will need to keep things up and maybe do some repairs or do some cleaning. But other than that, it can run pretty much in the background. There's even services that let you rent out your car. So there's a service called Turo, and you can actually rent out your car. If you're for example, if you're working from home, you don't use your car as much, maybe you can let it go for a couple of days or a few hours every week where you don't need it. And that's a way to generate some income, and all you have to do is keep the car cleaned and ready to go for the next person. And then lastly, I think the thing that most people fall into, that would be like an actual side hustle or side job that you take on. And for this, you want to look in areas that you're an expert in, or you have interest or skill in. So I know people who flip furniture. If you're really into going out and looking at antique furniture or old pieces, and you like to sand them and paint them and repair them, that could be something you can do and make legitimate money on the side doing something you enjoy. I used to buy things and sell them on eBay when I was in college. That was the way I made some extra money. There's all these things you can do: tutoring, teaching lessons. If you're skilled in sports, maybe you played a sport in high school, maybe you can set up coaching sessions to help people kind of refine their skills and get to a better level. There's all these things you can do to bring in some extra money with the skills you already have, just by kind of looking in and thinking about what did you enjoy? What did you do while you were in school? Or maybe while you hang out with friends, you seem to find these skills and talents that you have. And there's ways to take those skills and help other people who want to learn and know what you know, and also make a little money on the side while you do it.
I think, Chris, you're going to make people really put on their thinking caps, because that's a lot of those things that you mentioned are things they can do while they're sleeping too. You can earn money while, you know, all of these things are happening. I know a guy that I work with rents his car on tour all the time. Half the time we're taking him home because it's rented. But you know what? He's making money. So that's the way to do it. Tracy, you've got quite a few businesses. Talk to us about why you realized, how you realized you could do more than one. You didn't have to just settle with doing one thing.
Well, I certainly didn't wake up and say, oh, I'm going to start 4 things. It doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way. You need to really look at the timing and the opportunity. When does that exist, and where are you in your life? So I actually have invested time in the beauty industry. I've been in the beauty industry for 35 years. And along the course of that time, other opportunities presented themselves. So the Black History Camp, for example, it developed out of a necessity. I needed it for my own children. And so it was something that I started as just something to do during the summer. And as it matured, it turned into a 501c3, as we know it now, go beyond your knowledge. And so the timing was right for that. The opportunity existed. And that's how we got into the Black History Camp segment. And we really kind of jumped that off. And then as we matured, we realized that some of our children were graduating and leaving the house, that we needed to get really serious about our retirement plan and how we were going to do that and how we were going to jump back in full force. And that led us to investing in real estate property. So it kind of is really timing, opportunity, and a lot of risk. But you sometimes get presented with opportunities to partner with someone. And that's how we got into the yard sign business. And we partnered with my family members, and we have a yard sign business that runs in Florida. And everybody has their part. We know what we're supposed to do, and we play our roles. So timing and opportunity, number one, anytime getting into more than one thing. And then, you know, those passive incomes do help.
Absolutely.
I'm going back to Miss Fendi here. What are some factors when you should start when you're going to start a business?
Well, thank you, Reggie. Let me see some things that really worked for me. You know, and I'm hearing my husband in my head right now, because he always tells me, you know, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so what has really worked for me has been just really researching. I encourage everybody to really research, you know, the space that you're trying to get into. Explore, find what is a good fit for you. Try to find ways to align your passion with your purpose, and maybe that can be an opportunity to make something profitable from that. Making sure that your concept aligns with and really complements your lifestyle. And I say that because I've had personal experiences where I was looking for business opportunities, and I would really find something that seemed like a really, really good idea at the time. But then I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, I have a 9-to-5. And if this concept that I'm looking to develop has to happen during, you know, normal business hours or traditional business hours, which are 9 to 5, how will I be able to manage, you know, my bread and butter job? You know, I just couldn't do it. So really just putting some things into thought. Again, thinking about your goals and your objectives. What are you trying to achieve with this business? The finances, how much is it going to cost? I know some businesses, as soon as they start and they have one financial setback, they're out of business. So really, you know, accounting for those things. What's the time commitment? What else are you juggling that might, you know, pose some challenges for you? Understanding the time commitment, understanding what other requirements are out there, any licenses, any certifications, you know, what capacity do you have? What are some skill sets and abilities that you would like to really develop to prepare yourself to go into business? Are there some trainings that you might need? Any mentorship that you might be able to take advantage of? Talking to others. Oftentimes in our communities, we tend to, you know, keep our cards close to our vest. We don't want to share. We're afraid that someone will run off with our idea. But find some trusted friends or family members who can help you as being a soundboard, who you can bounce some of your ideas off of, and they can tell you, you know, what might sound realistic or what might sound, you know, a little bit far-fetched, and you might need to kind of work through that a little bit more. So just understanding your what. And then once you understand your what, understand now how are you going to execute this plan? How are you going to launch this business? What is it going to take for you? What's the marketing going to look like? Who's going to manage the financing? Understanding, those types of things. And then finally, last but not least, is really being flexible. You have to have a flexible mindset in this game. Plan for contingencies, because everything may not work out the way you plan. You may have some setbacks. I don't like to call it failures. They're just opportunities for you to improve and grow. So you may have some setbacks, and how to turn those setbacks into success. So those are just some few nuggets that I would share, that will help you as you're planning to start a business.
Great nuggets, great information. Chris, let's go to you and talk about, you talked about side hustles, talked about, that entrepreneurship. And we've got all these ways for people to make that extra money. John O'Brien mentioned, taking that extra money instead of just spending it, but investing it. Why is that so important?
I think we often feel like, we're gonna, it's like we can only make progress with investing or our retirement if we're putting large amounts of money in, because that's the only thing that makes a difference. And I mean, of course, who wouldn't want to be able to make these, huge chunks of deposits into the retirement account? But the reality is many of us aren't able to make these large bulk payments, but we're doing it consistently over time. That's how we make progress. And by doing these side hustles, bringing in additional income to your 9-to-5 job, it allows you to increase and up that stable monthly contribution into your retirement plan. And I think sometimes we overlook just the impact and power, even small dollar amounts, even if you're making an extra, $100 a month, the impact that can have on your future retirement. So for example, if you had $100 and you want to put that, let's say, into like your work 401k or an IRA plan, typically the stock market returns around 10% on average. And if you adjust that for inflation, somewhere around 7%. So just to be like conservative with the numbers, let's say 7%. And let's say you're going to leave it in there for 30 years because you're not retiring for way out into the future. That $100 over 30 years, if you put nothing else in there, would turn into $760 just by sitting there. Like you add no additional money, you do nothing else. It just sits. And that's the power of letting money invest and grow without you having to do anything else. That's why it's so important to not just take your money and putting it in a savings account, but actually invest it for your future and for retirement. And you can imagine if you up that number to 1,000, that would be $7,600. And let's say you even have a shorter time frame. Let's say you want to retire maybe 20 years. That $100 would become $390 or $3,900 if it was $1,000. And so these little amounts, although they seem insignificant now, with time, which is your biggest asset when it comes to investing for your future, they can become huge amounts that you didn't even think were possible. And this is just with one deposit of $100. You can multiply that over every month, putting that extra $100 in, and year after year, the impact that will have. And like, even if you're like, okay, I'm looking out, I know, let's say I want to have $1 million by the time I turn 65. And just assuming that you have $0 in your retirement accounts right now. You haven't even started yet. You've thought about it, but you've done nothing. If you're, say, 20 right now, you're young, you're maybe in college, or maybe you just are trying to figure out where you want to go, it would only take $360 a month to hit $1 million by the time you're 65. So you can imagine doing a little side hustle here and there, bringing in a little bit of extra cash. It doesn't take much to hit that $360 mark, especially if you're already working some other job, to be able to hit $1 million, which is a huge sum that almost seems impossible. If you're 30, it would take $700. And if you were 40, it would take $1,400. So say you're in one of these boats where you're getting started a little bit later. You can see that working maybe like with your day job, you don't have quite enough to hit those amounts. Those numbers maybe seem like a stretch for you and your budget. But if you were to do something on the side, something that maybe I mentioned earlier, like tutoring, coaching, renting your car out, that extra money, that money that's coming into you on the side, in addition to what you already make, can allow you to hit these numbers here and hit your retirement goal, and then live the life that you hope for, and enjoy the things you really care about in life with just a small amount or a small bit amount of effort on your side outside of your normal day job. Can make a huge impact when it comes to retiring. So never discount small amounts of money, because with time they can become huge dollar amounts.
But I was going to ask you about what I would need to do. So for a 40-year-old, $1,400, right?
Yeah, $1,400 a month.
Okay, you didn't get my joke, but that's
okay. I believed you. I was going with you.
Great numbers. I love your math. Love your math, Chris.
Going back to Tracy, what advice can you give someone who may be wanting to juggle more than one business? Or, as we talked about before, what is the time frame someone who may be thriving in their side business for them to step away from their traditional job?
Well, first, I would say, accept that you can't do it all. You may be in a situation where you cannot immediately start another business, or you may not be able to perform 100% on your 9-to-5 job and also build your business. So I would say just dip your feet in there very cautiously. Don't just jump all in, because, you know, we're trying to also plan for the future and gain wealth and invest at least what you said, $20 a month or whatever in your future. So accept that you can't do it all. And so when you're deciding, oh, do I want to start another business? Think about your business as a Fortune 500 company, because you're the CEO of your business, and you would not run a Fortune 500 company alone. So know that you can't do it all. Try to build a team. Fortunately, my team consists of family members, and we've learned how to work together. That is a learning experience. I don't know that every family can do it, but we're able to do that. And they serve as partners. We're all partners in most everything that we do. Don't try to build it all at once. Like, I said before, you know, I didn't wake up and say, oh, I'm going to have 4 businesses or 4 streams of income. Just understand that once your ideas come to fruition, you have to feed them. You have to feed them because that's your child, and you have to feed it with time. You have to feed it with creativity. You have to feed it with attention. And if you don't have that attention to give that business, then the timing is not right. Once the opportunity presents itself, then go for it, because entrepreneurs try many different things. I am not here listing all the things that I tried that did not work, because we would be here for hours. So just know that as an entrepreneur, your mind is constantly racing on ways you can make money, ways you can succeed and create opportunities for other people. But you really have to have that, what am I trying to say? The ability to stay focused and feed one baby at a time. That's what I would say.
Stay focused. We will stay focused. All right. Let's talk about, you know, how important it is and how tough it could be as a Black business owner. What are some of those problems that could get in your way and create challenges? Who'd like that one? You want to go with it, Chris? I think I lost Fenda.
Oh, did you hop out? Okay. Oh, sorry. Could you repeat that for me one more time?
What would you say? Some of the big, or Tracy, either one of you. What are some of the challenges to being a Black business owner?
Well, I'd say maybe one is we have to be conscious about looking for role models. We have to understand that we're not the first one. There are other people out there. Sometimes when you try to get a lot of financing, you know, going the traditional route, you may be turned down. And in my time, hopefully not in my children's time, it was difficult because they would look at you as a female and a minority. And so they would not want to risk giving you that money. So we have to look back in our history and say, we're not the first ones who did this, and how have they done that? And that's one of the things that we really try to focus on when we have our children's attention during our camp, is they're not the first ones. These things have been done. We may not have heard of the people that have done them before, but our ancestors have paved the way for us, and we have the ability and the opportunity to move forward with that.
Okay, got it. All right, Fenda, I see you're back. So talk about that. Black business owner, how tough is it? What are some of the challenges?
Well, you know, I'm happy to sit here today because today really marks the 1-year anniversary of our beauty supply store. And, you know, we've made it this far through faith and prayer and the love and support of our family. But, you know, along this journey, there are some challenges that, you know, may not have affected us immediately, but we definitely see coming up. And I would definitely say that some of those challenges would be just kind of like supporting the support that is needed for Black-owned businesses. You know, sometimes getting the support from within our own community can be quite a bit of a challenge for us. financing, opportunities to gain resources, whether it's from state and local governments or, just whatever resources are out there for minority businesses. Oftentimes we don't hear a lot about those resources, or you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get some access to some of those resources. Even some of the industry discriminatory practices, in my space, as a beauty supply store owner, oftentimes in other Black-owned businesses will share that it's kind of hard sometimes to get access to inventory, access to resources to help build our business. From a financial standpoint, for us to get into this space, we had to start off being self-funded. So we had to utilize our savings to get the business up and running. And we know a lot of people, a lot of owners who were not as successful. So that's a big gap for Black-owned beauty supply store owners. And really also having the confidence within ourselves, stepping outside of the box, because oftentimes people tend to put African-American women in a box when it comes to even being in the beauty industry. You have to look a certain type of way, you have to present yourself a certain type of way. And so really understanding that you can be whatever you want. You can have whatever look. If you want to have your hair long today, short tomorrow, it should be up to you. So having that confidence and not really putting yourself within restrictions, really being able to be creative and opening yourself up. But those are some challenges that are real for business owners, particularly in my space.
I want to thank all of our panelists for coming out today. And I'm definitely going to take all of the knowledge myself, and definitely have been inspired to start something.
Yeah, you can put your $20 a month away or $20 away, and you're going to do well, according to Chris. And you know what? Starting a business, getting your side hustle, and doing something that's your passion. Those are some of the points that hopefully everybody would take away something from today. We thank you all. Once again, we're going to put all of your contact information on our Magnolia Links Facebook page so folks can get in contact with you and get some more good pearls of wisdom. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for
All
having
right.
us.
And we are right up at 2:02. As in those in the news business know, we've got to say goodbye. So Reggie, let's say goodbye.
Yes. I want to thank all of our panelists as well. We have mentioned we've put all of their links within the Magnolia Links under the Facebook page, for sure.
And this is just the beginning of our Healthy Homestead focus. The Magnolia Links will have another virtual financial planning program in November. So we want to make sure people look out for that. Also excited to announce we're offering a few scholarships, very important information to folks who need financial counseling help to get them over their finances and help them just kind of look through and see what they can change, perhaps what they can do. It's a chance to get advice on everything, including budgeting and how to get out of debt. If you are interested, all you have to do is apply for one of the scholarships. Send us an email at magnoliahomestead@gmail.com. Once again, that's Magnolia, Magnolia, healthy, HEALTHY, homestead, HOMESTEAD@gmail.com. We're so excited because programs like this don't happen without great leadership. We want to thank our Magnolia Links president, Dion Griffin. Thanks to our second vice president and head of programming, Adrian Kennard. And finally, thanks to Ms. Donna Lowry, who was not on camera for this one, but she definitely helped us make this happen. She did everything. So Donna, we love you. And all the members of the Magnolia Links National Trends and Services Committee, you'll see their names and credits at the end because they are a very hardworking group. It's my group. I love them. Again, we're rolling the credits over the music by someone you know well, Reggie, right?
Yes, that is my friend and very good pal of mine, Dennis Jacobs. He has been a resident of Carrie Steele Pitt's home. He is a very talented composer, and he's currently a music major at SCAD Atlanta.
Well, Reggie, I love working with you. Once again, we'll do this again in November, I hope. So study well. I know you're doing great in your studies. We appreciate you taking the time out to join us. And thank you to everybody who joined us to watch.
Yes, I am